So guys, Innovating Humanity, we have a great guest today, Jon Howard, or Jonathan Howard. Let's speak kind of full sentences here. Jon, you are joining us from London, right? Hampstead?
Yes.
Oh, such a lovely place. I'm so I'm so kind of jealous about that you are in this wonderful place. I'm in Riga, wonderful place as well. So, Jon, good thing is usually when we talk, you are not prepared, and I love this because when we are preparing ourselves, we are kind of limiting our energy flow or whatsoever, idea flows, something like that. So maybe you could help me out a little bit. If you would need to describe yourself in 3 sentences, what was your experiences as a professional job doer? What jobs have you done in 3 sentences? What characterizes you?
I've done archaeology and advertising and marketing and consulting and things like that. What describes is somebody who comes from the creative industries who was very disappointed with how bad the quality of creative thinking is in the creative professions. So I decided to figure out what was going wrong and help people to change it.
Okay, and you are wonderful. So I have been working with you for some occasions with some different groups, and I have seen how do you work, and it's really marvelous. Improvisational theater, so to speak, right? The influence of improvisational theater, influence on your methods, how to teach from marketing, even from archaeology. So maybe let's start with this point. What I remember we talked about some years ago about. Some kind of roots of educational system right now what we have, and you had this story how it was created, Babylon, or what was the place, Persia?
Yes, the Babylonians, Iraq.
Babylonians, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What was the story? Could you describe a little bit? So, what are the correlations still? What still stands something like as a science from that time until this time? And what time has it passed? It's like 3,000 years. I have no idea. Sorry.
Longer. 4,500, nearly 5,000 years now.
So we are talking about. You will be explaining about 4,500, 5,000 years ago. What was like educational process at that time, right?
Yes. Okay. The educational process, ever since then, has treated the child's mind like a machine that can be programmed in a very mechanical kind of a way, with very little passion for the subject and almost no imagination or insight about how the learning process works. So the Babylonians could be forgiven for thinking that the child is a machine. We know better. We've had 4,000 or 5,000 years of insight that they lacked. And we still teach kids the way that the Babylonians did. Some teachers take the initiative. Some teachers are passionate about the subject, passionate about teaching, and very imaginative about how they teach. And they take the initiative to teach really well. And kids love them. They love learning from them. More importantly, they love the material that they learn, and they feel like they've discovered, they feel like they own the material for themselves, because really good teaching is a process of guiding people's discovery, which the Babylonians didn't do. So the Babylonians would force you to learn things in parrot fashion. They'd hit you really hard with sticks if you got things wrong. They'd humiliate you in front of the class if you got things wrong, and they would force you to compete against your classmates for the teacher's approval, which is a kind of a substitute for the parents' love. And so they'd create very anxious, hostile, competitive people who didn't learn things as well as they could have. And all of these people ran around trying to prove that they knew better than everybody else, because that was the system that they were brought up in. And we still have that today, a lot, where education should be a process of developing the mind. Really, it's just a process of filling the mind with knowledge that can then, in a very, very short space of time during exam season, this knowledge can then come out in a horrible tribal ordeal. And at the end of it, you have a trophy, which gives you status and importance. Now, unfortunately, this trophy, whether you get a bronze, silver, or a gold, whether you get a first-class degree, a second-class degree, what percentage you get, or what kind of grades they have, it's got nothing to do with how well you're going to be able to do the job that you want to do. It's got nothing to do with it. You could spend 3 years in the law library of your college and become the best law student, and you could be a terrible lawyer because practicing law has got nothing to do with studying law. And it's the same with almost every other profession.
Jon, sorry, interruption. What was the incentive to create such a system for Babylonians? There was like the ruling class or ruler wanted to have some kind of system where they could make people more obedient. so there won't be revolutions or something like that? What was the case?
Well, yeah, people were already quite obedient. They just needed to maintain that. What happened there was that most people were illiterate, and literacy is such a weapon. It's so powerful. And if we live in a society where everybody's literate, we don't realize how powerful it is. But in a society where 15% of people can read and write and 85% can't, then you have a huge power imbalance. Now, what the king believed in those days, first of all, he believed that society must believe I'm a god. They had gods for everything, and the king was a god. And secondly, they believed that if society doesn't believe that I'm a god, everything's going to fall apart and it's going to descend into anarchy. And at the very least, I'm going to get my head chopped off. So the king and his priests were really, he was an actor, and his priests were stage managers. And the priest's job was to raise the status of the king, to create the mythology around the idea that this guy is a god. And if you have a group of people who come along and say, nah, he's not a god, I remember him, we're old family friends, he's an idiot, he's a schmuck, he's not a god, he's a guy in a dress, who cares, he's not a god, then this is going to be a problem. And the king is going to have to kill people who do things like that. Now, if you have a society where you're not allowed to say the king's not a god, otherwise you'll get your head chopped off, then that's a very, very repressive society. It's not a society like we have today. And so there were things that you maybe thought or maybe even knew that you couldn't say in public. Kind of Soviet or like North Korea, like a totalitarian nation. But this wasn't so much about ideologies, this was about the foundation of the world. The king in that temple over there on the hill is a god. He has the power of all of the gods in heaven. And not just because he has armed guards with spears and swords who'll kill us if we disagree, but because we genuinely believe, being illiterate peasants who can't read and write and who don't know very much about the world, we genuinely believe that that guy in the temple on the hill is a god. And that's terrifying. And he has total power over us. And just with the force of his imagination and by clicking his fingers, he can cause the harvest to be good or he can cause famine. So we have to be really nice to him. And the schools were for scribes. The scribes are the people who could read and write. And hey, guess what? The scribes were also the priests. It's a very comfortable little mafia. So if your father was a scribe, you were going to be a scribe. And if you were a scribe, then you knew what your job was. Your job was an apparatchik for the Babylonian temple. Your job was to maintain the mythology that the king is a god, and to be a bureaucrat to help keep the irrigation pipes flowing and to help keep the grain distribution network going. All of the people, all of the accountants, all of the people who did the forecasting for harvests, all of that logistical stuff was done by the scribes, who were also the priests. So it was, I mean, in America, they talk about a military-industrial complex. This was a religious political complex, where it was run by the 15% of society who knew how to run anything bigger than a bath. Everybody else just kept their heads down and did the jobs that they were told to do.
So, and for example, just switching some like 5,000 years up to these days, what subconsciously, I think subconsciously, what we have kept from those days? What do you think?
The idea that the teacher knows everything and the child knows nothing, and all the child has to do is work hard enough and memorize enough stuff, and the child will one day become as wonderful as the teacher. The idea that all children learn in exactly the same way, that the material is all equally suited to everybody's mind. The idea that the only decent way to learn is parrot fashion, and if you're the best one in the class at learning parrot fashion, then you're going to be the most successful adult, and you're going to be the adult who's most worthy of praise and respect and esteem. And the idea that we can shatter the world into different subjects and study each subject in isolation without ever putting them together. That's a big one. There are subjects that can and should be taught together because they work very, very well together. Like maths and music, for example, or physics and music. These subjects work amazingly well together. History and law, economics and biology, beautiful combination, because economics is just the study of a biological phenomenon. And when you locate economics in the context of biology, you have a different view of it from someone who just sits there and thinks, money, money, let me find out about money. You see economics as a biological phenomenon. It's completely different. These are the kinds of things that the Babylonian mentality stops us from doing because it doesn't want us to be holistic. It wants to keep the world shattered and separate because then it's very, very difficult for us to take any initiative. So one of the characteristics of the Babylonian system is about keeping things as they are, keeping things static, which means no innovation. or at least no innovation that the king doesn't want.
Okay, there comes two big aspects from my perspective, what I feel. One is ethics. We can talk about spiritual ethics, religious ethics, whatsoever, really ethics, not kind of king is God as a propaganda machine or target, but this is kind of question about ethics. And second one is, I just read yesterday actually, that 25% of Americans, as of now, right now, thinks that sun goes around the Earth. 25%. So
25%.
Yeah, that's I couldn't believe this number. I couldn't believe this number really. So my question would be actually, what can we make out of it? So where we are heading right now? In terms of ethics, so do we have some kind of question of honor? Do we have some question of humanity towards each other or something like that? And about this intellectual capabilities, what we have. Because I think
definitely
we have some kind of wave right now, right? Some kind of, I don't know, I cannot describe it, but there is some kind of educational crisis wave. And what is the correlation between sugar amount, or what is correlation between social media and short attention spans? I don't know specifically, but there is some kind of way what correlates with results in political processes.
Yeah, well, an education system, just like an army or a police force, is a product of its society. As much as society is a product of education, the system of education is a product of the society it comes from. And the education system in the West has been suffering for a few decades now from a sense of hubris, from a sense of arrogance, ideological and political arrogance. The idea that we should tell children what to think politically. I had it at school in the 1980s. I had teachers who were very left-wing, and they'd try telling us horrible little privileged boys how the world really worked. And a lot of us got quite resentful because we saw what they were doing. They were trying to turn us into socialists, and it wasn't pretty. I had an archaeology professor who insisted that every society before the Industrial Revolution was Marxist. And therefore, Marxism is the only way for humanity to go. The guy wasn't an archaeologist. He was a political propagandist with an agenda, and he used archaeology as the vehicle for his agenda. A lot of that's happened in academia, and it's seeped into schools as well. At the same time, with the education system being a product of its society, we care desperately about grades, marks, numbers, ways of comparing people statistically and apparently objectively. And the school system has become infected with that. I've heard teachers complaining that they can't teach anymore. The system doesn't allow them to. I've even heard teachers complaining, and this was horrible. A teacher complained to me, "I hate my students." And I asked her, "Why did you go into teaching?" She said, "Because I love kids." So I asked them, "Why do you hate them?" She said, "Because the system gets the worst out of me, and it forces me to get the worst out of them. I hate them and they hate me. And that's the system's fault. It's not the kids' fault." That's really, really sad. And there is nothing she could do to change that system, because as long as she was teaching within the state system, there were things she had to do. Now, if you have the budget to start up some private
John,
school of your own, it's different.
John, sorry to interrupt. So this is what I'm saying. I have been saying for a long time about this, that you can have really great professional or great person and put him or her in a bad system, it will just break you. It's just
Totally.
like a Stanford prison experiment, right? So where
Right,
the system changes you totally. And the question is, maybe you have some parameters. What parameters exactly, what conditions make this happen in education?
It's a good question. Well, it happens gradually over a long period of time, so it's kind of invisible. We don't see it happening.
Let me throw in one example. We are incentivizing fakeness. We are incentivizing to fake that we are going towards these results, that we are interested in those results, that there is meaning and something like that. So when we are in this fake environment, fake relationships for the fake goals, so it's kind of, we are not naturally connected. We are kind of disconnected. We are kind of, in terms of tribe, we are talking about a lot of tribes, right? About tribe.
Right.
So in terms of tribe, there is kind of, we are doing something that won't protect from us from lion, something like that.
There's something called evidence production. In any group, it doesn't matter if we're a startup or an army regiment or a Soviet toaster factory. In any organization, we produce the evidence that we're doing our job, which is what the bosses want or what somebody wants. And we learn how to play the game. So in Soviet Russia, you had to produce 100 yards of cloth to make suits. In the West, we shrink the cloth so your suit doesn't fall off when you wear it. But in Russia, if they shrunk the cloth, in the Soviet Union, if they shrunk the cloth, they only had 90 yards, not 100 yards. They'd get punished for only having 90 yards. So they supply 100 yards of unshrunk cloth to the tailor, who then makes the suits, makes 100 suits instead of 90 suits, so he reaches his figures, and then the suits fall off as soon as you put them on because the cloth hasn't been shrunk properly before making them. So those factories were focusing on the wrong metric. They were focused on producing evidence that they were doing their jobs rather than producing the thing they were supposed to produce. Now, in a modern company, you can get exactly the same thing. You can get people doing the things that they know will produce the evidence that they're doing their jobs without necessarily doing their actual jobs. If you have to be at work at 9 o'clock and you get into trouble for being at work at 10 o'clock, then you come to work at 9 o'clock and you read the newspaper and you play Sudoku and you chat with your friends and you start working at 10 o'clock. If you actually came to work at 10 o'clock and started working straight away, you'd get into trouble because you weren't there at 9. So we produce the evidence that we're doing what needs to be done without necessarily doing what needs to be done. It happens in every organization. Same with an army unit. In an army unit, if you're shaved and your hair is cut and your boots are polished, you look like a good soldier. You may not be able to fire a rifle, but you look like a good soldier. You're producing the evidence that the system wants you to produce. Another army unit might have filthy boots and be unshaven, but they might shoot straight. They might be much better in war than you. So who are the better soldiers? And how do we know? We know what we think is the better unit when we see them on parade. We don't know anything until we see them in combat. And so many human organizations are the same thing. We're very, very good on parade, great at shining our boots, terrible in combat, especially if we've never been tested. We don't know if we're any good in combat. We're focusing on the wrong things. You don't win wars with shiny boots. You win wars by shooting straight.
Well, did I tell you this survey in England? It was like really huge, and there were those. The question was, what are the priorities for the kid to have at school that he or she is happy afterwards? Happy, not rich, not successful, but happy. So I'm happy with my life. So those three were: third place, academical success; third place, second place, if I remember correctly, relationships; and first place, emotional state.
Interesting.
So, talking about this again, teachers who have this feeling, and I have worked a lot with teachers, really a lot. So for 11 years, I have had a lot of dealings with teachers, and I have really good connection with them. I feel them. So the topic is, it is hard in this system to create relationships, meaningful relationships, because they are not connected to your life. It is connected to your social life here at school, but this is not connected to your life as per se life, right? So in a tribe, we will learn how to hunt lion. We will learn how to cook. We will learn something that is connected to your life. So there is this connection with life, and even worse, there are this habit creation, what kind of makes my life harder afterwards, right? We are creating habits, actually, what ruins us, and subconsciously, and we need to talk about subconscious actually right now, therefore, I suppose, subconsciously, I feel that I'm a little bit kind of damaged, and the teacher feels like subconsciously I'm kind of aggressor towards the kid, in a sense.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. First, yes, we do learn habits that are very, very hard to unlearn. And the habits that we learn at school, it's such a formative age where we're developing our identity and a sense of self within a group, that whatever habits, particularly habits of thinking or habits of mind and social habits, habits of communication, whatever habits we learn at school that seem to work at school, we're going to take with us into adult life. We're going to take them with us to university and hope that they work there. And if they work there, then we'll take them into a job. So at school, we're taught that being clever is very good. And at university, we're taught being very, very clever is even better. And one of the ways that we become clever is to prove that everybody else is stupid. And the easy way to prove that everybody else is stupid is just to say, yes, but, to everything they say, because then they're forced to just justify themselves and defend themselves. You're not forced to justify or defend anything. You get to look really clever by saying yes, but to everybody else. and they're then vulnerable and on the defensive, and they have to defend their cleverness. So then we take that bit, and we get a great rush of endorphins when this happens, and we feel fantastic. And then we get to a job, a management consultancy, or a law firm, or a startup, or a government ministry, and we figure, yeah, I know how to do well in this environment. Walk around saying yes, but, and getting everybody else to doubt their own ideas. Horrible, horrible way to live. So yes, these habits stay with us, and these habits become part of the culture, because culture is just created by collective habits that the group has. That's the first thing. The second thing is...
Can I interrupt here? Just please keep your thought, okay? You told me once, let's not name this company, but maybe you could share this story. So you were working with one really kind of high, everyone knows this global company. You worked with some kind of leaders of this company, and you had trouble kind of going through the motions as you need as a teacher, right? Because they started to fight you. Yes, but case. Could you just retell it? It was such a marvelous story.
I can't remember which one it was. There were so many where I've had
north of
companies
England
who started to fight me.
Okay.
I don't know which one you're talking about.
Okay, so this brand involves one fruit, kind of that, and there were guys who were just deciding. Listen, you were teaching them this yes and approach, so to be open in conversation. And the guy, one guy said, "Listen, let's check them out. Let's check him out, and I will be fighting him all the time with yes but, yes but."
Yes, right. Yeah. That was a group of people. It was a 2 or 3 day course. And the first morning...
And by the way, sorry, and this company is really famous about this company's creativity, kind of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were teaching yes and variations on the concept of yes and, which is very simple. If you say yes and to an idea, then you're probably going to build the idea, take it forwards into the future. If you say yes but, then you're going to kill the idea. You're also going to kill the relationship, and you're going to create a hostile conversation. So we were teaching them the various mechanisms of saying yes and in different kinds of creative conversations. And in the afternoon, after lunch, they were insanely negative, and I couldn't understand why. Every single thing I said, somebody would say, yes, but that's not true because, and they'd think of some nonsense example to try and demonstrate why what I had just said wasn't true. And the whole afternoon, it was firefighting, the entire afternoon. And every time they said, yes, but, I'd have to try to bring it back round again, without saying yes but myself, because then, that would be a kind of a hypocritical thing to do. So I ended up figuring out how to say yes and, and agreeing with them, and then taking the logic on a little kind of U-turn back to the original point, which seemed to work extremely well. Every time I did it, they'd be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And that was quite an interesting experience. And then it was only a couple of days later in the bar, when they got drunk at the end of the course, that they admitted to me what was happening. One of them came up to me and he said, yeah, I didn't really buy all that yes and stuff on the first day. It all seemed a bit kumbaya, a bit too kind of cheesy. So we agreed at lunchtime on the first day that we were going to spend the whole afternoon trying to get you to say yes but, and you never did. So now we believe in it. And that was a lovely moment.
And this is great because, as a teacher, sometimes what I understand that there are some guys who are really skeptical. They want to fight and something like that. And actually, if you honor them, if you respect them, if you work with them and help them, then all group actually sees through this interaction you as a teacher. I had one bank who asked me to work with their leaders, and they said beforehand, listen, we have one guy who just hates all the teachers. And I asked, please show me at the very beginning who he is, and I will try to maybe help him, kind of that. And on the last day, he said, listen, you helped me so much. I solved my case with my kid. He had trouble in a relationship, something like that. But others just kind of see what you are trying to be as authentic and helpful. And you are not dodging the questions. You are kind of not escaping. You're kind of helping one. So this is kind of tribal thing in a sense, right? You are tribally responsible and helpful, kind of that. So kudos to you, man. Kudos to you.
All right. Well, no, there are two sides to it, though. On the one hand, you do have a kind of on the one hand, you're performing in a way. And especially if you're teaching communication. If you're teaching, the reproductive cycle of the 10-spined stickleback, then it's different. If you're teaching communication, then the way that you
I
answer
just like those
questions-
examples. Okay.
The way that you communicate is as much a part of the teaching as the stuff that you're trying to teach. So you cannot afford to go against your own principles in communication when you're teaching.
Sure, yeah.
At the same time, though, you have a responsibility to the whole group. It's not one-on-one coaching with an audience. So if one person is problematic, and they could have any number of reasons, it's not your responsibility to figure out what their reasons are. You're not a therapist, and it's not one-on-one. So if maybe somebody actually wants a fight. That's what they're there for. They're there to have a fight with an authority figure in public. Maybe someone is struggling with the material and they really do want to get their head around it. And they've got some kind of a personal or intellectual or emotional block about this bit of the material, and they want you to help them over that hump. Other times there are people who have come to have a tiny fight with an authority figure to be told their boundaries. There are people who actually come to be disciplined. There are people who come to be told, no, you can't do that in here. That's what they're there for.
We can say this is like family archetypical model, what is like playing out for everyone.
Sure, yeah. Now, whatever somebody is there for, it's my responsibility is to the group, not to that individual, or partly to that individual, not to the point where I can allow it to interfere with the process, the learning process for the rest of the group, or the content for the rest of the group. So you do have to kind of establish, we're a tribe now, and these are the tribal boundaries. These are the rules of behavior within this tribe. And no one individual can say, well, I've got a very specific problem, so I'm going to take up all the group's time working on my problem, which, by the way, I've already decided I can never solve. I just want the attention. I've let that happen to me a few times earlier on in my career, and it really annoyed me.
Same here. Yeah.
And I was so angry afterwards, like, what did this bastard do? And then I realized this is nothing to do with this person. It was because I didn't understand what was going on.
Yep. There's always this game of borders. I told you, I don't know about this experience. I was 1 week in a school, and in the first day I raised my voice. I have never done it, not in my personal life, not as a teacher. And I understood that there is no tools in my arsenal how to speak with them. And I was shocked. I was really shell-shocked. At the very evening, I thought, listen, I need to be here 4 more days. What? And next day, guys from that class came back with some presents. They told that this was like one of the best classes whatsoever. They liked it and something like that. So what I understood, they were kind of doubling down on my doubts that I don't know the stuff. I just don't know. I would need to learn something like for 1 year at least to become a decent school teacher. So this is kind of totally different game of borders, totally different game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I interrupted you. You were talking about some stuff, and I asked you to tell this story about.
So the other thing about a society is that, as you mentioned, yes, a tribe demands that its members learn the skills that are necessary for that tribe. In some tribes, you need to swim fast-running rivers. In other tribes, you need to climb high trees. If there are no high trees in your landscape, you don't need to climb high. If there's no fast-moving rivers, you don't need to swim very strongly. Every tribe has very unique or very specific needs about what the skills are that they need. Now, we assume, and every tribe knows what the skills are, right? In the modern world, we assume that there's a certain set of skills that every tribe needs, and we celebrate those skills. And we cause people to compete to show off those skills. Argumentation, basically, saying yes, but being clever, thumping your chest, ooh, ooh, ooh. Me Tarzan, intellectual Tarzan, big PhD, everybody has to fall at my feet and call me doctor. Until there's a medical emergency, of course. Until there's a medical emergency, I'm a doctor, and everybody has to give me lots of respect for being a doctor.
This is a nice example, by the way. This is a nice example. When the real crisis hits, right, then everything is tested. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you've got a PhD in basket weaving, you're not going to be useful to anybody. But until a crisis hits, as long as you've got a PhD in basket weaving, you're like, I'm a doctor. And what's happened is that we've reinforced skills that are kind of a superstition. We believe we need those skills. In reality, we don't need these skills. We need other skills. Skills that are severely lacking in the world today. Spend 5 minutes on Twitter, or 5 minutes on any news website, or 5 minutes talking to any reasonably well-informed person about what's happening in the world today. And you can conclude quite fast that there are certain qualities lacking in society. And anyone can speculate about what those qualities are. Are those qualities taught in school? Nope. Are they taught at home? Sometimes, depending on the home. They're not taught in school. What sort of qualities are taught in school, and what do we have far too much of in society? Same qualities. Being clever, trying to be right, trying to get things right all the time. Being dominant. A lot of it's about getting right answers and keeping things that work fossilized, keeping correctness static and forcing it on other people. You can either be creative or you can be right. You can't do both at the same time except by chance. And the world needs a lot more creativity right now than rightness. At school, we're taught how to figure out how to be right. We're not taught how to be creative. And we need to be taught how to be creative at as early an age as possible, because we have creativity killed in us when we're very young by the school system. It destroys our creativity. By the time we're in double figures, by the time we're 10, 11 years old, we've got very little creativity left, unless we're lucky or resilient or somehow rebellious. Most of us learn how to play the game of getting grades, the game of earning the fake love, the approval of the teacher, the game of winning the hierarchical competitions later on in life about getting into university and getting into good jobs. We learn how to play those games. So we learn how to become hostile and competitive. We learn how to undermine each other's interests. And in fact, we learn how to undermine, in a lot of ways, our own relationships, our own happiness, our own potential. And definitely we undermine our own imagination, because we have a constant fight between the ego and the imagination. The ego wants to be right. The imagination wants to play. And the imagination can't play when the ego is demanding rightness all the time. So most of us, in most of our cases, our imagination is a slave to our ego. And the ego is just the worst slave driver ever. It's needy, it's greedy, it's ignorant, it's brutal, it's impatient, and it has no idea what it actually wants. And so it cripples the imagination. The imagination is kept in a cage, and very, very rarely is it ever allowed out. Some people in the West have learned how to release their imagination from that cage. Improvisers, for example, people who are trained to go up on stage with no script for 2 hours and keep the audience laughing, they have to learn how to let the imagination out of the cage. That's what improvisation is. Most people don't know how to do it, and it's really, really sad. I think improvisation should be taught at school. It's as important as any other school subject. As far as I'm concerned, you can replace maths with improv, and you'll have a more rounded child. You could replace geography with improv. You could replace literature with improv, replace history with improv. You'll have a more rounded child.
This is bold.
And in fact, you can teach anything through improv. If you want to teach history, well, why not have a scene between the peasants and the landowners in the 17th century? Have a debate between them.
Right?
Have a town hall debate. Sure. Have a debate between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks or whatever it is, to explore these historical processes, to bring them to life in a way that actually emotionally makes sense to the child and cognitively makes sense to the child. I was taught history in a very expensive school by being forced to memorize a series of dates. 1864, this happened. 1868, that happened. I can't remember if this happened in 1868 and that happened in 1864, or if that happened in 1868 and this happened in 1864. But I remember something happened in 1864 and something happened in 1868. So I'm a historian. It's nonsense.
Listen, this is the actually let's talk about subconscious a little bit, because this is such a huge topic, and I hope that it will surface in terms of public conversation, dialogues. What is education? Where it should be, and just using this platform just to tell that I have this book, 11 Rules How to Find Your Passion, and this conversation reminded me that I put there some kind of 3 or 4 these habits that we have learned at school. So, for example, I can do something without sense of meaningfulness, or without sense of why. So it's okay to live without your why, without why I'm doing this. And when you are asking, for example, at school, why I'm doing this, there is no answer. There is just dogmatic. It's like religious stuff, right? Because God says that. This is it. God says that.
The teacher says is because the teacher says this. It's more powerful than God.
Or system or whatever someone says. And someone says, and you just kind of obey. And the question right now, I just think again this conscious, subconscious processes that education operates kind of only in conscious level, right? Mental level. Remember this, remember that. I was in Finland 10 years ago in educational ministry, and they started to think about integrating theater and physical activities more in education. So they will actually squeeze something out, and drama. They use specifically word drama will be more. And about drama, for example, regarding emotional intelligence, which is my topic, and empathy and communication and stress management, it is wonderful stuff. It is so lot of things go in there for imagination as well, right? So though dramas can be really kind of stiff, and dramas could be really improvisational. They are kind of the range, right, about this. So talking about subconscious, what do you think happens right now in this deepest level of our consciousness, right? That actually we are creating people in subconscious levels, right? What is unspoken, what we haven't talked about. There are these fears. So, for example, ego, and imagination. We can sometimes say that maybe this person don't have so much of ego, but he has or she has a lot of fear. And again, so subconscious mind is fulfilled with some kind of entropic aspects of us. And we are coming out of this school and we know nothing, where to go, what to do, how to deal with ourselves. And it's kind of subconscious mess in terms of teachers who don't know what's happening with them. And they are kind of gradually through this system making this mess into minds of millions of billions of people, kind of that. So what would be your, I don't know, suggestion, hypothesis regarding this, what to do with this subconscious stuff? Because we don't know what to do with conscious level, right? We are stuck there.
Yeah.
And actually we need to start to think about this subconscious level.
Well, look, first of all, there's not a lot we can do about the subconscious level. The subconscious is in charge. We can recognize it. There are various ways that we can try to work with it. One of the things the subconscious does is it keeps us safe. And the fears that you talked about, you said something at school might not necessarily be ego, it could also be fear. Well, fear of what? If it's a school, the chances are it's not fear of falling or fear of spiders or snakes. It's probably a social fear. Fear of losing
disrespect, exclusion, and stuff like that, yeah.
Right, which is ego. The part of the psyche that tells us you should be scared about what other people think of you is the ego part. Now, we learn how to socialize. That's not the same thing as being socially scared. But if the only way we learn how to socialize is to be socially scared, to be socially traumatized by the threat of judgment, because it comes constantly, or by being hunted all the time by teachers, then we're going to learn those kind of responses, those kind of default responses that we have are going to become the norm for us in later life. It's been said, I've had conversations with people who say you should never homeschool your children. So why is that? They say because children need to go to school to make friends. Bullshit. Children make friends. They don't need to go to school to make friends. People make friends in prison. You don't need to go to prison to make friends. People make friends.
Nice example. Okay.
That's what people do. They make friends. And we think, no, without school, children will never make friends. The problem is the way children make friends at school. They learn that so much social bonding is about bitching together against the system, suffering together against a common authority. There's a lot of competition between companions who should be cooperating with each other. There's a lot of competition and looking over each other's shoulders, trying to sabotage other people to protect your own interests. And this is adult life's way of teaching us how to be adults within a very specific type of system. It's got nothing to do with actually developing a human being in the best and most holistic way. And if you think how long we spend at school, how many resources we put into educating our kids on the level of society, how many teachers, how many buildings, how many items, textbooks, crayons, science labs, doesn't matter what, how many resources, money, time, human resource we put into educating kids. And what we're effectively doing is teaching them how to be little factory apparatchiks and how to be insecure status junkies, thumping their chests and making dominance displays. That's what we teach them how to do. We teach them how to be very, very anxious and competitive. If they learn how to be nice friends, nice parents, nice companions, productive members of a community, that happens along the way. That happens by chance. That happens because they're human beings and human beings are inclined that way. That doesn't happen because they're taught it at school, and they should be.
Listen, I got this strange epiphany regarding, for example, helping system or helping teachers. So when we try to help someone to change their habits, their attitudes towards something, it's actually much more difficult to do that on mental level. So if I use these classical teachers' methods, but I have this or that, there is this method, there is that method, and I'm not involving body and subconscious mind. So actually, this is a really long road. This is a really long road. If I give methods how you can do that by working with your subconscious, that actually this is a shortcut. And by that, actually, we can actually solve maybe this mental level as well. And this kind of a paradox, right? We cannot get the grasp on the mental level of the surface of education. And actually, we need to go on the subconscious level and actually give methods to teachers how to help them get rid of deep stress, fear of this, fear of that, how to create your safe space in a classroom, how to open your imagination. Actually, we need to do this through subconscious level. And I have some training sessions coming next month, and I think that that's what I'm starting to do right now, to work with subconscious methods to give teachers and other companies, kind of that. What do you think about that?
I think it's very nice. It's a very good idea. It might be quite threatening for teachers.
So there comes science. The good thing is really science has had some grasp on it, right? In Switzerland there is this, I hadn't told you, but in Switzerland there is this scientific institute what studies subconscious, and I read one wonderful book in English called My Weight. I couldn't find it in English, just in German, and wonderfully explained concepts of developing understanding of subconscious, and just wonderfully. So when we put this kind of arguments of science in the front of them, that guys, check this out, and we make disclaimers and borders where you can be safe. So actually, we have marketing materials how to tell about that stuff, tell about subconscious work on subconscious.
From the teachers I know in the UK, their reaction to their reaction will be, that sounds very nice. I'm going to wait until my local education authority forces me to read that. Until then, I'm going to ignore it. And if you argue with them, which I have, then they'll say quite reasonably, look, I'm sure, genuinely, sincerely, I'm sure it is a wonderful thing. There is nothing I can do about it. And if I talk to any of the other members of staff about it, if I talk to anybody in the local education authority about it, I'm just going to end up with a shitstorm on my head.
You know, funny thing though is one of the I love change management. This 8-step change management concept. You know, this Kotter. What was his name? And the first was create coalition. So my understanding is just to work with those who feel that, and create positive cases. So this is like the first stuff about that. And there is one really strange aspect about Latvia, that Latvia is kind of really spiritual-minded. This is really huge amount of people who are like open-minded towards spiritual. Actually, subconscious, it's not something like really totally spiritual, but we are kind of putting that in a spiritual kind of this box, right? So in Latvia, therefore, maybe people are more open to that, actually, really esoteric and spiritual stuff. So, and still, I think that in England, there should be, and there are guys who are open to that, right? There should be.
There are. The problem with somewhere like Britain is that interests cluster, right? The kind of people who are interested in this are not the kind of people who are high court judges or influential opinion columnists.
Know? Are you sure?
I know a few high court judges.
Okay.
And the kind of people who are into these interests, they tend to cluster around other things as well that we don't consider very valid in the mainstream of society. And so the issues themselves get marginalized and dismissed because of the kind of people who are drawn to them. Which is it's a barrier. It's a real barrier. Now, if you want, for example, if you want to change the education system, I'll give you an example of how slow it can be. I did a workshop a few years ago for a county council, Bedfordshire County Council, for the schools improvement department. I didn't even know that a council had a schools improvement department. Okay, fine. They have a schools improvement department. I showed up there thinking it's going to be 3 people, 4 people, 130 people in the schools improvement department of Bedford County Council.
And how many people are in this county? Approximately.
There are about 40 schools, and 130 something people in the schools improvement department. And it turns out each and every one of them, every single one of them, is an ex-teacher, fed up with the system, wants to find a way to change it. And what do? For 130 people in the schools improvement department, they sit around discussing how they could make schools better. And who do they give their recommendations to? People who aren't listening. And that's just Bedfordshire County Council. I don't know how many there are in Solihull or in any other county council in the UK. There must be thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who are being paid public money to sit around and think about, how do we improve education? And whatever ideas they come up with, nobody listens to. So if you want to build a coalition, maybe start with those 130 people from Bedford County Council, and then maybe Buckinghamshire County Council have got another 140 people who are doing the same job. If you get those 270 people together, maybe you have a beginning of something. And then there are, I don't know how many councils up and down the UK. And that's before you go anywhere near central government or anywhere near the Department of Education who set the actual policies in consultation with the local education authorities. And it's a massive, mammoth undertaking. And everywhere along this network, you're going to have nodes of people saying no, people blocking. Lots and lots and lots of people blocking. A lot of the people in the system really want to improve things. They really want to improve things. That's why they're in the system. And a lot of the people in the system want to keep the system going. The first job of a bureaucracy is to keep the bureaucracy going, right? The second job of the bureaucracy is to serve whatever purpose the bureaucracy supposedly serves. The first job is to keep itself going. And more of these people want to keep the bureaucracy going than to improve anything. And they know, they're experts. They have all the tricks about how to kill initiative. It's their job, and they do it very well.
Why is
Killing
that so?
initiative is their job.
So it's kind of quite cliche, right? That bureaucracy can kill initiative. And those bureaucrats who are like towards that, kind of they are open-minded towards initiatives, they are kind of are pushed out of the system. What's your take? Why is that happening so?
A bureaucracy needs stability. It absolutely needs stability.
Okay, so I come to this one topic, what was like my, I don't know, my epiphany, so to speak, in my shallow mind. 5-6 years ago, I was asked to help government to introduce new educational model at schools, and in terms of marketing perspective, so how to sell this idea to teachers, to parents, something like that. And I thought, this is marvelous. This is great, because at last you understand that you need knowledge, you need know-how, how to tell the story or new methods. Why do you need this? This is change management, one of the first steps of change management, right? And I asked, wonderful, we had a nice chat for something like 2 hours, and at the very end I asked, so could you tell what is budget for this whole operation, how to create the marketing materials, posters, whatsoever, ads, or what else maybe we will need? And the lady told me, none, we have zero. So those guys who were distributing funds don't understand that stuff. They just don't understand. I know that for those guys who deliver those funds, for those guys, there should be before that marketing specialist who would explain why marketing would be needed, so to speak, right? But the thing is, like, there is another story when bureaucrats, nice people, I'm really sure they are nice people, they just don't know, they don't have knowledge about something. And one, again, state company came to me and asked, listen, we have something like 2,000 employees and we need this and that. And I said, listen, we can make it cheaper and more effective. Let's do this. It will be cheaper and lot more effective. It will hit your targets of team building, knowing each other, learning new methods. And she said, listen, one controlling institution don't understand that this could be a valid way of learning. So we cannot do that. So the question is about knowledge, about know-how of bureaucrats, right? And so the question maybe comes to the topic of how to school bureaucrats, how to help them to understand stuff. Because they are not bad people, but I understand. They are just, again, they are in the system with their knowledge, their habits, and some of them are really like stubborn towards stability to kill some ideas, right? But there are some bright minds, and the question how to work and how to help bureaucracy.
Right. That's half the question. The other half of the question is, why is there a situation where some dude says no and everybody else says, okay? Why is that happening? Somebody came to you and said, an organization says no, so we're not doing it. Why didn't that person who came to you with the news that the organization said no, why didn't that person turn around to the dude who said no and say, why are you saying no? It's a fantastic idea. Why didn't they sell that idea?
It's already sealed. It's like...
Sealed in what way?
Yeah, sealed and done, and everything is signed.
In what way?
Yeah, this is
by whom? When?
So there is a chain of reactions. I understand that what you are saying. That so, for example, can we move one step behind before that, right, and change or improve? So it's like whatever. We understand that the system is have different incentives. Right?
Okay, so in some ways, the system has the kind of leadership protocols of a mafia or a gang. In some ways, which is that there are some people who can just say, boom, we're doing it, or we're not doing it, and it happens.
Yeah,
like
because
Captain Picard.
They are emotional leaders, or they are kind of influential, like great cardinals or something like that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So whoever is dealing with those people, whoever's curating those people and managing those people needs some serious coaching in how to deal with the boss, how to manage their boss.
Listen,
managing upwards is an underestimated skill.
Managing upwards. Could you explain it a little bit more?
Managing your boss.
A boss. Managing your boss. Ah, okay. Yeah. By the way, this concept of helping bureaucrats is, I suppose, one of the biggest question right now for the European Union, for actually big systems, big countries, really, because it's kind of I was astonished really that, for example, I'm offering really twice as effective, twice cheaper, some kind of learning process what can help, and because they don't understand, it's not kind of checked out at all. It kind of goes away. It fades away. It doesn't appear here. Yeah. And by the way, you know, I moved from media to education, and I thought that in education you would be more metric orientated or quality orientated. My feeling I was so naive. And in television you have metrics, right? You have ratings, as simple as that. So and there are two ratings. One rating is like people like it, and other there is mainstream. This and this amount is watching. So you have PR, and you have just like pure metrics and numbers. In education, there is none. There is almost none. We made first learning processes something like 11 years ago. We made camps, and we because I was like newcomer in education, I thought, listen, let's do surveys, scientific studies about this or that effectiveness. And for the first 3-4 years, we did these studies, and we brought them to educational ministry and showed them something like that, and no one was interested. And I don't judge them because this system is not incentivized to see something, wow, this is world-class level. Oh, you had these great lecturers. You had these great trainers from United States, from England, from Germany. Great. Listen, let's multiply this. Let's scale it up, you know, kind of that. So the question about incentivizing this development, right? And where to start it from.
People don't buy processes until they've bought the product. So if you're going to explain to someone how their processes can be improved, you need to show them how the end result is going to be made better. That's the absolute starting point.
So in education,
if you say to Unilever, look, I have a new way for you to make your washing powder. It's going to cost you a bit of money. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. And they say, great, how's it going to make the washing powder different? You say, oh, it's not. It's going to be exactly the same washing powder in the same box at the end of it. You're just going to have to spend 50 million on improving your processes. They say, all right, well, will we produce our washing powder faster? You go, no, it'll take you just the same amount of time. All right, will we need fewer people to produce it? Nope, same people. Same amount of money, same amount of washing powder, same amount of chemicals, same amount of space in the factory, same amount of electricity is going to be used, blah, 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 blah. The final thing that the customer gets is going to be identical, but I'm going to tidy up your processes for you, and it's going to cost you 50 million. Of course, they're going to say no thanks. If you say, I'm going to help you to produce a type of washing powder that will wash at half the temperature, twice the amount of clothes, twice as clean, and it's going to take you, Unilever, half the amount of soap and half the amount of chemicals to produce. And for every box of this powder, you're going to be able to sell it at twice the cost, and it's going to be half the size of your existing boxes. So in terms of stock control and stuff, you can get twice as many boxes at twice the price per box as you're currently packing into your trucks and on the shelves in the stores. Then they'd say, oh, that's very interesting. Yes, please, let's talk. Because there's a tangible improvements. Smaller boxes, stronger product, cleans better, cleans more stuff, cleans at lower temperatures.
Sense, right?
Any one of those benefits is worth having a chat about. So that's about the final benefits. Now, with a bureaucracy, it's really, really difficult to say to a bureaucracy the equivalent of powder that washes at lower temperatures, because it's a more intense formula. What does that mean in bureaucratic terms? Fewer typewriters. What does it mean? They don't know what it means, because they don't know what their purpose is, because most bureaucracies really don't know what their purpose is beyond maintaining the bureaucracy. If you ask a government ministry, a friend of mine, I was having a drink with him the other night. He's a civil servant. If you ask any civil service department, what do you do? What's your job? To implement government policy. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's a very self-serving
So
description.
actor
What
switches
is your
on.
actual job?
Implement government's policy. Okay.
What is your actual job? And they say, well, it's kind of clear. Yeah, I thought so. Now, we all know what implementing government policy means. It doesn't mean that a decision made in 10 Downing Street gets pushed out to the individual people who have to deliver it for the people fast. If so, for example, maybe it's in the employment ministry, and it's about welfare benefits, or it's about job seekers trying to get into work faster. Whatever it is, maybe there's a new policy for job centres, which is if a job seeker has had at least 2 interviews over 2 weeks and they haven't yet got a job, then you put them into a special fast track where maybe you give them extra coaching on interview skills, stuff like that. This is an example of one of the policies that they've had. Now, that policy can either be implemented well or badly. If you're just going to do evidence production, then you'll do lots and lots of paperwork to prove that you're implementing that policy. It'll take weeks to feed back to the actual ministry, and they'll find out nothing's happening. And then they'll have brainstorms and they'll shout things at flip charts to figure out why nothing's happening, and they'll still figure out that nothing's happening. Alternatively, you could be implementing the policy very, very well. The government, the people who are in charge of pushing it out, they could implement it very insightfully and very well. And that means that you could end up with a load of job seekers who are no longer still looking for jobs after approximately 2 weeks in the system each. They're now in jobs. And that could be really, really powerful. But at any point, you could say to the same civil servant in that ministry, what is your job? And they can't tell you. All they can tell you is what they're working on right now. Well, right now, I'm trying to help job seekers find jobs faster. That's all they can tell you right now. If you say, well, apart from that, what do you do? And they go, well, I help implement policy. It doesn't mean anything except project by project. At the end of the day, their job is to try and they'll give you some philosophical nonsense. They'll give you some stuff about the ethical philosophy about, yeah, well, I'm helping the government to manage the way they, for the taxpayers, and they don't know what they're talking about. Whereas an artist knows what they're doing. So I want people to think about things they've never thought about before. I want to give people an emotional response that they can't intellectualize. That artist knows exactly what they're doing. Another artist might say, I've got all this dark stuff inside me and I need to get it out. And I know that when I get it out, it's therapeutic for me, and a lot of other people find it useful as well, even if they can't put it into words. Bingo, fantastic, go for it, do it. I implement government policy. It doesn't mean anything.
Actually, it means that this human being stays in this level, so that there is no connection. Again, there is no connection with real life. So remember, we talked about this school stuff, that there's this fakeness, right? That we are doing something that won't help our tribe or help myself. So I'm still in this state. Because for a bureaucrat to kind of honestly say, we are trying to accomplish this act from European Union in time for 2024, 1st of January, and they believe that. So they are in this level as continuation from the school, I suppose, right? And continuation from the school, as simple as that, in a sense. Right?
Yeah. So much of it is about shallow thinking. We're not encouraged to think deeply. But we can't think very deeply. After a certain point, our brain gets tired and we go back to shallow words. I've seen so many creative briefs for brands that are supposedly the result of months of very, very deep thinking from some very highly paid people. On a brief, okay, you have features and benefits. So what are the features of the product? And what are the benefits of those features, okay? And I saw a brief for a car brand written by a very intelligent strategic planner, very highly paid. And it said, features. It said things like tinted mirrors, electric windows, just usual car stuff, right? Nothing spectacular. That was the list of features. Now, what you really want to do is you want to identify one feature, figure out the deepest, most compelling emotional benefit and dramatize the hell out of that, really push that. That's what you do when you've got a good strategy. This guy hadn't found anything. So features, he just listed 6 or 7 typical car features. And then under the list, under benefits, features. That was it, under the list of benefits, just features.
So that means
so
the car will have features as the benefits for the user?
Yeah, why should the user care about the car? Because of the features.
Okay.
Now, what that guy was basically doing is saying, this is a hot potato and I'm passing it over to the creative team, the people who have to write the ad and write the slogan. The thinking is unfinished. I can't be bothered to think. So I'm going to let the creatives do it for me. On the same brief, we had, of course, under objectives, we had to raise awareness. No shit, Sherlock. Really? I can't think of a single advertising campaign in the history of humanity that had an objective to reduce awareness of the thing that we're talking about.
Make brand less known.
They sit around, they order biscuits, they order coffee, they have a flip chart, they have all these clever people, they have consultants, facilitators, they come in and they organize a brainstorm and they scream the most dominant possible words they can think of at flip charts and they all feel like rock stars. And at the end of it, they come to you and they say, right, we've really thought it through, we've got the smartest people on the case, and we figured out our objective. And you go, great, what's the objective? And they say, to raise awareness.
This is kind of Monty Python stuff. This is Monty Python. This could be Monty Python. So, for example, if we are cooking bread, so listen, we should create bread what people can eat. It could be like chewy. 3 months. Yeah, they can chew it and they can swallow it. Kind of that.
Yeah.
That could be like Monty Python stuff.
Swallowable, very important feature. In fact, the benefit, in fact.
Fully swallowable. Fully
swallowable, because if it's not swallowable, it's not digestible. So the feature is swallowable and the benefit is digestible.
Holistic approach to swallowability.
Swallowability.
Holistic
swallowability. HS for short, because we need acronyms, right?
HS, yeah.
So then we send a memo around everybody in order to optimize
system, new HS system in a cooking industry.
HS optimized technology, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, just let's move a little bit more to the subconscious stuff, because that's kind of bothering me right now. And I have been working right now. Really, I have had 30,000 students in my time in 11 years, something like that. And I understand that a lot of that stuff has happened superficially, kind of on the surface, really. And this is kind of really because I hope that I gave best methods what I could give at that time. But when I'm starting to involve body and when I'm starting to involve subconscious levels, those reasonings with those causes, then really kind of magic happens. And I just think that we talked the other day about this, how we could tell society that subconscious level, subconscious mind, is the one who we need to work on if we really want to get rid of, so to speak, in Buddhist terms, rid of suffering, right? How to solve the questions, how to solve the problems. Maybe you have come up with some ideas, maybe some basic bullet points or aspects, what is really needed to tell society that subconscious mind is what controls us? Number one. Second, we can work with that. And third, you can have and we can have this great new product in our lives, relationships, job, health, and so on, so on, so on.
Well, it's a truth. It's a common truth that the subconscious mind is in charge. Then it's a question of convincing people that that's the case, because if they're not convinced that it's the case, then they're not going to go any further. If they're already convinced that it's the case, then it's a question of another persuasion job, which is where you've got to persuade them that there is something they can do about it. There is something that they can do to either harness or channel the workings of the subconscious mind in their favor and not against them.
So actually, sorry, we actually should approach this topic as creating new markets. Actually, this is creating a new market because there are those innovation curve early adopters, right, who are just looking forward to something and they're feeling that something like that. But we are like at 1% or 2% percentage globally, I suppose, something like that, right?
Yeah. So most people recognize the subconscious as powerful. They don't recognize that there's anything you could do about it. Even a psychotherapist will tell you, yes, the subconscious is everything. The subconscious is in charge. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to go to a therapist twice a week, talk about your mother, and maybe one day after 20 years, you might find some kind of happiness. So let's look at the first problem first, which is that people not believing or dismissing the power of the subconscious. That's a problem. That's a problem. I don't know what's the best way of convincing people. I'm sure we could think of some fantastic examples.
Washing your hands, for example, where there was a lot of deaths of young mothers when those doctors just didn't wash their hands.
Right. Okay. Yes. Yes.
So there was this wonderful story about I heard about Jews who said that, listen, just wash. What was the story you told?
Oh yeah, in the Middle Ages. Yeah. When people said that the Jews were poisoning the wells because everybody was dying of disease and the Jews weren't, so they assumed that the Jews must be poisoning the wells. It turns out the Jews were just washing their hands. So the Jews said, wash your hands and leave us alone. And everybody said, no, that's spooky Jew stuff. We don't do spooky Jew stuff. So they kept not washing their hands, kept dying, and kept killing Jews. So that's a superstition. Now, there are a lot of people in the world who are superstitious. A superstition just being a belief about cause and effect that's not true.
Listen, but I suppose
true, but it's usually not.
100% of people are superstitious because we all have some kind of naivete towards something or some whatever. And actually, there are so many examples. Actually, for example, still the question about placebo, right? There are so many studies right now. There are showcases when you can case studies when you can see that it works, right? And still it kind of stays in the shadows, so to speak, right, for the mainstream and stuff like that. And by the way, the question, sorry for interrupting and jumping in, the question right now is about media as well. So me as a media guy, I know how ignorant I can be because I'm living in my own bubble. Now, for example, I'm in education and on the many levels. I'm on a business side of things as well. So I feel those media guys who just don't understand this stuff. They don't understand. They are trying mentally to kind of get a grasp on it. But every time, I suppose, for them becomes the word subconscious or placebo or whatever, it actually meets their superstitions, right? So it actually, what you said is, I think, maybe crucial. So one should approach this topic regarding, so we are dealing with superstitiousness, right?
Superstition,
superstition, and we should act accordingly in terms of marketing, so to speak.
Yep, totally. I'm still trying to think of ways to persuade people who don't believe that the subconscious is actually very, very powerful. There are ways. I just haven't thought of them.
Listen, if we approach this from this aspect of for drama controls. So, for example, we have these communication for control dramas. So we have these communication types from our family archetypes, right? So, and if we create the message in this shape of that specific some kind of 4 types of drama, the question for me appears instantly is, So if, for example, there is this interrogation or victim, let's victim is it's kind of more easiest one, I suppose. If in my childhood I had this victim relationship with my parents, so what does it mean? It will shut me down or it will open me, or it can go both ways. The main thing that if we talk in victim sense, victim style, so to speak, right, about this kind of, I don't know, placebo is good, subconscious mind is good. Can we say that we can open to that, and if we do that wrongly, we can shut the people down?
Yeah, definitely we can. With the victim thing particularly, or in fact with these four archetypes, the victim, the interrogator, the intimidator, and the aloof, distant person, whilst it's true that they originate in childhood, it's one aspect of the subconscious. The subconscious is programmed in many ways by various stimuli that happen to us, often very negative stimuli. So the control dramas that you talk about, for example, in a victim, somebody who basically says, poor me, poor me, poor me, that's a response that's been trained in them by their life circumstances, probably by very intimidating parents who are constantly looking to threaten them, humiliate them, intimidate them, shout them down, shut them up. And that kid will then learn to go, oh, it's not fair, and whinge and moan is a way of getting sympathy and attention from other people, not necessarily from their parents, although possibly also from their parents. And because that works, that appears to work as a way of getting energy from other people, they carry that behavior into adult life. That behavior is not only dysfunctional, it also creates, it creates trouble. The more the person employs that behavior as a strategy, the more trouble they get into. And yet, because it's a habit, they don't know how to do anything else. And if you walk up to that person as an adult, it could be a very intelligent, very educated adult, very nice person. If you walk up to that person and you say, I've identified that there's something wrong with your behavioral responses to all sorts of stressful situations, you're basically a victim. You're a poor me. They will explode with rage. How dare you? You don't know anything about me. Who the hell do you think? All this kind of stuff. Even if a therapist, a person that they've paid to tell them this stuff, tells them this stuff, they can still get very, very negative. And guess what? They get straight into the poor me mask, as it were, in response. So you say, you're a poor me, you're a victim. And they go, God, you're criticizing me. How can you criticize me? Everyone criticizes me. Well, that's a poor me response. If you say that you're an interrogator, you're somebody who's constantly interrogating people, hunting them, trying to make them feel like they're wrong, trying to force them to justify themselves. This is your control drama. They'll say, really, give me evidence that that's the case. How do you know what you're talking about? You don't know. Are you a psychologist? So they'll start interrogating you. Now, what they don't realize, maybe they do, in a part of their brain that they have to push it down. They probably don't realize, and this is the subconscious part, that these responses are not rational, considered, intellectual, logical responses to that situation in that moment. These responses are trance-like habits. They're habits that you've had since childhood. You flip straight into this trance when this stimulus happens. Whenever the stimulus happens, that's it. That's the trance you switch into, and you know no other response when you're in that trance. And it's a 3-year-old trance. It's the trance of a 3-year-old who's got an overwhelming incoming traumatic stimulus, probably from the parents, and has to figure out a way of reacting to it. And that energetic response is automatic. You can't consciously control it, unless, first of all, because you can't even consciously notice that it's happening. Unless you realize from your own sense of dissatisfaction with life or from somebody else's feedback, you realize there's a pattern here, and there's something dysfunctional about the pattern, something that you want to change about the pattern. And then you take steps to identify what it is. Whatever those steps are, you take steps to identify what it is. And then eventually you realize this is the pattern. I have an interrogator pattern, or I have an aloof pattern, or I have a victim, but whatever it is. And then you can start consciously trying to change it, which is not easy, but at least it's a start. Most people don't get that far. Most people just know that there's a problem. And most people, because we have a sense of psychological self-preservation, we don't want to disintegrate psychologically, so we blame other people. The reason why I react aggressively when people criticize me is because they're so aggressive when they criticize me. It's not because I have a trance-like trauma where I can't handle criticism. It's because these people shouldn't be criticizing me. It's their fault. And maybe I did overreact when they criticized me, but they deserved it because they were overreacting when they criticized me. So I'm not the one who's at fault. I don't need to change. They need to change.
Listen, I had this feeling. What would be your thoughts about it? So imagine if I had. I thought that I have aloof, and I have victim. So I have this mixture from my childhood, I suppose. Maybe if we are talking with someone who has this whatever, for example, poor me or victim drama style from childhood, what happens if we are using this language, but as it would be given, this communication style would be given from a loving parent? So, for example, interrogation would be nice, as an example, right? So, for example, we are still interrogating, but in a loving manner. How do you feel? Are you happy? How can I help you? So, not to push that, but you know, every aspect has range, right? So, in victimness, we speak. Listen, how it's. I see that you have really hard time right now. This is really hardship for you, right?
Okay,
emotionally, it's really hard, and maybe we could do like this, that it will be emotionally better because it's really so hard. Actually, the funny, just one more thing. When I start to work with teachers, you know what I noticed at the very first sessions, and I was struggling for the first 2-3 sessions. I noticed that they need empathy. And I'm more than eager to give empathy to them, to say, listen, guys, I know that this profession is so freakingly hard. This is so hard. And kind of the audience lights up. And from humanity, from humane point of view, I think this is kind of okay, this is needed. But there is this kind of concept of maybe poor me aspect, right? And poor me, kind of, you can connect with that just from the loving source. So you use this style of communication, but from loving source and knowing your goal, where you want people to go, what you are offering.
Okay, now that's a nice technique. It's a separate thing from the specifics of the control dramas, because the thing about these 4 control dramas is that each and every one of us uses all of them to some extent in different situations. All of them have them in us.
Some are more dominant.
Some are not more dominant. Exactly. All of them have. All of us have them in us. That doesn't mean that teachers are victim-y types of people. It just means that there are certain areas of the teaching profession where the way they're treated makes them feel a bit poor me. There are several. Guess what? The legal profession is the same. There are plenty of lawyers who feel very poor me. I know this very well. My uncle, my nephew is a lawyer. My sister was a lawyer. My brother-in-law's a lawyer. My uncle was a lawyer. Lawyers, there's a lot of ways in which lawyers feel like poor me. I'm not going to go into it now. It doesn't matter. There's lots of ways that lawyers feel like poor me, especially junior lawyers, especially when they're working on a big case with an ignorant client who's very greedy, blah, blah, blah. Advertising people feel very poor me. We have such wonderful ideas and our clients have no imagination and they keep killing our ideas. Every profession, every job has an element of it which is poor me. And if you're presenting to them, that can be a very good thing to start with, to empathize with the bits that make them feel like poor me's. At the same time, every profession has elements of the other 3 control dramas in it as well. The issue isn't which particular control drama a profession has. It's good, though, to use the control dramas as a way of empathizing and creating empathy. The crucial thing here is about the tone of voice, okay? Because control dramas can be expressed as much in tone of voice as in the content of what you say. And there are 3 stances here that some psychologists talk about, which is parent, child, and adult. So parent is high status down to low status. You're a high status figure and you're talking to a low status figure without any power. The child, you're a low status figure, powerless, and you're talking to a high status figure with a lot of power. Adult is your equal status and you both have power and agency. I'll give you another example from a mate of mine from the other night. Okay, he was having a chat with me about a friend of his, or his ex-girlfriend actually, and they got joint custody of the kids. And we were out in the park in the evening, and I heard his side of the conversation. She phoned him, and I heard his side of the conversation, and I heard him say, "I'm on the heath." And then obviously she asked about the dog. "He's fine." And then, "I'll be back an hour maximum." Then he put the phone down and I said to him, "Dude, whatever's wrong in that relationship, you're contributing to it." And he said, go on. And I said, well, there's a very big difference between I'm on the heath and I'm on the heath. There's a very big difference between he's fine and he's fine. And there's a very big difference between I'll be home in an hour maximum and probably about an hour.
It sounds like interrogation style. He perceives this as an interrogation.
She's clearly interrogating the hell out of him, and he's going full poor me.
Okay.
And he's like a little child who's being nagged to tidy his room. And this man's 50 years old, and that's his girlfriend. That's not even his mum. I mean, it's just a girl. She's figured out how to get the intimidating, interrogating vibe going, and he's been trapped in this game with this particular woman for about 30 years. They're not even together anymore, probably because of this game. Now, here's the problem. She's subconsciously drawing him into the vortex, drawing him into her needy game, and he's subconsciously getting into that game. Maybe he has a subconscious need to play it himself, whatever. If and when he changes his style in that relationship, I'm going to see him again next week. We'll see what happens. If and when he changes his style, I can guarantee you within a few days, she's going to say to him, there's something strange about you. You've changed. And he'll probably go, what do you mean? Instead of, what do you mean? Which means that she'll snap him straight back into the original game again. And then she'll say, you don't seem to care anymore. There's something about you that's just so heartless. And she'll phrase it in some kind of a way that will make him feel attacked. And what she's actually saying is, you've changed the emotional dynamics of this game, and I don't like it because I'm not familiar with it, and I don't feel that I have the automatic paths towards power that I've had for the last 20, 30 years. And if he doesn't react by obediently falling back into the old pattern, she will probably become quite explosive. She'll probably start trying to intimidate him. Screaming and shouting, maybe the occasional frying pan will fly around. Certainly some kind of an object will fly around the kitchen, possibly him. And she'll try everything she can to force a return to the old rules of the game, which is going to be a horrible situation for him. And he will have to take the short-term pain of insisting that he's not going to go back to the rules of the game, because that could destroy him if he does go back.
Okay, this comes similar to parents when they are struggling to kind of adapt to ever-changing kids. Yep. So not even kids. So for example, I'm 16-year-old and I'm just thinking about this or that, and parents are in the shock because the homeostasis has been ruined, something like that.
Of course.
And there comes this topic about marketing. So how you are selling, so to speak, for the other person your inner change. By the way, knowing this guy, what you're talking about, he has this really mild tone, really kind of warm. Yes. He has really mild, warm tone in his voice, and he's really kind of really sweet. I would say 10-year-old, really nice, sweet 10-year-old kid, being like 50 years old or whatever, right? And again, it comes to question: do I want to be adult, and do I want to sell this idea to other person? Because there is this funny thing about, usually in my training sessions, when someone has this great idea, epiphany, how to change, I say, listen, it's really great that you are having this epiphany, what you want to do with your life, and you want to change. Now you need to switch on your empathy, and you will need to help your relatives to understand your change. This is hugely important, because I was experimenting with that. I kind of I was wild, so to speak. I want to do this or that, and kind of I thought that my mother's inner intelligence will kind of get a grasp on it. No, I actually needed to be really aware where my mother stands on, and I needed to help her a lot more, because I was like on the ride, right? I was on the wave, and she's like sitting here and don't understand anything what's happening. So it comes the question about
it's
marketing.
Crucial, because we're all products of our environment and products of our social environment. And if the social environment disapproves of things we're doing, then we're going to be inhibited in doing them. In the hero's journey, which is this narrative structure that's been
Joseph Campbell, yeah.
Yeah, well, he didn't invent it in the same way that Isaac Newton didn't invent gravity. He just observed that it was there. He observed something that had always been there, and he gave it a name.
And he got that from tribes, right? Observing tribes. Something
Lots of
like
things, and mythology, and of course,
okay.
mythology and tribes are very closely related. Now, in the hero's journey, there's a stage in the narrative where the hero is given a call to adventure. And the hero does something called refusal of the call. The hero refuses the call to adventure. At the beginning, the hero's like, no, not going. And then a mentor comes along, or some dramatic event happens that pushes them over
Matrix,
the edge.
Neo doesn't believe that he's the one, and Morpheus says, yes, you can, and something like that.
Exactly, yeah. Now, very often in a hero's journey, the hero themselves is actually very enthusiastic, but it's the people around the hero who do the refusal of the call. So the people around the hero say, no, don't go. It's dangerous. You're not good enough. You won't be able to handle it. And the hero says, I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. And so the refusal is deferred onto the hero's companions. And what's happening is they're not necessarily scared for the hero. Maybe they are. Maybe they think the hero is going to be destroyed and can't do it. What's really happening is that they don't want to change. They don't want the hero to leave. They don't want the discomfort of having the hero leave them. They don't want the hero to go out and grow when they're not going out and growing. They don't want to see changes and development happening that they haven't subscribed to for all sorts of reasons, just because they're change averse or because they're insecure about the fact that somebody who's maybe less capable than them is able to go out and grow to a greater extent than them. That's humiliating. So we have all sorts of reasons for apparently very lovingly and very supportively holding each other back. People sabotage, we sabotage loved ones' interests a lot. Because we're actually protecting our own short-term emotional interests. That's quite a big element of things. And so you'll get a lot of, when you change, you'll get a lot of pushback from other people. And if they know you very well, then they know which buttons to push. They know your doubts. They know what's going to make you go, maybe I can't do it. They know exactly what software program to use to get you to doubt yourself, and they will do it very cynically. They'll do it expertly, and they'll do it with great love and affection, and it's all for your benefit, my darling. And it's quite pernicious.
Funny thing about this is that I have seen that, I have experienced that, and I do believe that this is like biggest topic here is fear to lose something, and we can say this is ego, something like that. I'm kind of empathetically trying to kind of describe it or excuse that person towards that because this is fear, and I can understand that. And if I'm naming this as a fear, then I can work with that. So, for example, if you have a relative who will have this sense of fear, this rush of fear about something, you need to work with that. So actually, there comes this really strange thing that I created this communication course. What starts with the question, do you know that you are selling all the time? You're selling your kid idea to brush your teeth. You're selling the idea, maybe let's go to vacation or not go to vacation. Let's do this or that. So you are selling all the time. And if you're not taking care of this, the life and misery will take care of you. Kind of that, it will start to use you. Right, yeah.
Now, there's something else here, which is that everybody knows this stuff. Everybody knows this stuff already. Like the friend I was talking about who you met on the Heath, he's a very self-aware, intelligent, insightful individual. He's not stupid. He just couldn't see what he was doing when he was on the phone to his ex. And he was going, oh, I'm on the Heath. He's fine. I'll be home in an hour. He didn't see what he was doing. I can guarantee you, if I was on the phone to my ex and it was me talking like that, he'd see it in a second. He would say to me at the end of that conversation, you know what? Do you know what you were doing there? And he would mimic my tone of voice, and I would go, my God, is that what I was doing? I wouldn't be able to see it, and he would. You wouldn't be able to see it, and I would. And I wouldn't be able, and we can all see it. It's universal stuff, universal patterns that we've all seen, that we've all participated in, that we've all suffered from. And when we're doing it, we can't see it. Or if we can't see it clearly enough. Or we get so irritated by it that we just externalize blame and we don't understand how much agency we have to create differences in that relationship, because every relationship is a series of games that follow agreed rules, not necessarily agreed in writing, just agreed by kind of osmosis.
Listen, we have talked something like 90 minutes.
Wow, that long.
Such a blast, you know. And I suppose we should round it up because I don't know, Arthur is alive there or not. He is alive. Kind of that.
Dehydrating in the corner of the room.
Dehydrated, yeah. He's trying to produce more saliva just to stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. Kind of that. But anyway, let's finish with one strange topic about innovating humanity. So we talked about this a bit. Humanity is ever changing, big ship with let's imagine this ship with 100 stories high, and lot of consciousness in different levels. And let's say that underwater there's ego and fear and whatever, and then upper echelons there are some kind of mental concepts and something like that. So humanity is as it is, and it is floating somewhere. And innovating humanity, the topic where or from what angle we should see ourselves as a human being, right? As you said in a Heath, to your friend, listen, you are talking like that. So what's from your perspective, what would we need to do to get to these core aspects, where to change something, when to start to shift something? So I always love in these topics, maybe we can find something really practical, because we all know, oh yes, this is education, oh yes, media, oh yes, politics. Maybe you have some kind of, I don't know, angle how to look at it. From what aspect we could start to move something? That's a cracker,
That's
right?
a bloody good question. That's a bloody good question.
While you're thinking, I go back to two aspects. One is media, and second is education. So
Right.
those two create borders with what we politicians work in, bureaucrats work in, society work in, media, for example. They create borders. What is known, what is not known, what is affordable, what is not affordable. For example, Me Too moment through media creates some kind of borders, or this cancellation politics, especially in the United States, right? This story about what I told about Washington Post, there was the one journalist who were like bullying others because she was woke and they were not woke enough, and then they let that go because she crossed some borders. So media are creating borders, what is allowed, borders where to fit in. So it's like we will have imaginative society or kind of fixed society, and education does the same actually, but even in the deeper level.
I think media and education are both responsible for a very, very important thing, which is that they help to establish norms.
Yeah, borders. That's my name for that is
And borders.
Borders. Yeah.
Now, there are two things. One is undoing what's wrong, and second is how humanity can evolve and improve in the future, which is separate from, bigger than just fixing what's wrong. I think the number one thing that's wrong in the world today that is so unnecessary is everybody behaving and reacting emotionally to things with very shallow thinking. And what that means is that they end up focusing on things that don't matter at the expense of things that do. And that is the fault of both the education system and the media. The media inflates people's sensitivities and inflates the dramatic tantrums that people throw around different subjects, instead of saying, guys, calm the hell down. And the education system is partly contributing to that as well, especially higher education. Anywhere in a university where you need safe spaces because the professor has talked about a subject that triggers you, is probably, that shouldn't be a university, that should be a nursery school. And if you need a safe space because the professor said something that triggered you, you should not be at university, because you can't handle concepts that you're unfamiliar with. Go back to kindergarten and try again. So the education system starts to indulge these extremely damaging trends in human stupidity, and the media inflates and exaggerates those trends in human stupidity as well. We need to focus on things that matter and stop focusing so much time and energy on things that don't matter. That's a major, major thing. What sort of humans would you like to see in the world in 100, 200, 1,000 years' time? Start being those kind of humans now, and I can guarantee you they won't be people who are running around looking for microaggressions to criticize each other with. They definitely won't be. We haven't moved on very much for the last 30 years. My sister worked for Camden Council in North London in the 1980s. 40 years ago, and you weren't allowed to say black coffee or white coffee. It was coffee without milk or coffee with milk, because black coffee and white coffee were racist. Now, this was a rule invented by white people.
I'm really sorry that I'm laughing. I'm from, by the way, just in case, I'm from Eastern Europe right now, kind of Latvia or Scandinavia, and I have a feeling that this is kind of really good place. We are like kind of not so many in normalized, so to speak, kind of that. Yeah, sorry.
So this rule, of course, was invented by white people. All the black people who worked for Camden Council found it hilarious and ridiculous. So they would start talking about things like, if there was a black door, they'd talking about the door without milk. Or if the wall was painted white, they'd talk about the wall with milk. And these are the black people making these kind of jokes, because white people didn't have permission to make these kinds of jokes. That was 40 years ago. People were joking about how ridiculous it was then. And now the world has decided we're not sensitive, we're not hysterical enough. We're not oversensitive enough. We're not prickly enough. So now we've got this new concept of microaggressions, which is the most ridiculous nonsense I've ever heard. Because if anybody accuses you of a microaggression, just offer them a micro apology. And if they refuse to accept your micro apology, then say, well, apparently it was bigger than microaggression, wasn't it? Because if it was just a microaggression and you accept my micro apology, then quite honestly, was there any reason to waste any breath talking about it in the first place? All you're doing is making me irritated. Because now I have to remember I'm not allowed to talk about spaghetti in front of Italians or whatever it is that you felt was a microaggression. And no, I can't be bothered. I'm not going to treat every conversation like a minefield where only you know where the mines are. Because if you really want to do that, if every conversation is a minefield where only you know where the mines are, then why don't you come with me through the minefield? And when I step on a mine, you'll blow up too.
Okay. Big shout out to Ricky Gervais you saw other day about his concepts on Twitter that if you are offended, that doesn't mean you are right. And this is wonderful concept. And actually, this is really strange about this. That again, everything can be ruined. So wokeness, in some sense, can be really nice things, right? But you can just pull it through one radical aspect of it, and it can just damage stuff.
Sure. Look, what we call wokeness, I mean, we used to call it, basic courtesy, consideration, and respect. Now we call it wokeness. And wokeness, in my mind, is a label that can be applied to something when the correct direction has been followed too far. Not bullying people because they're different, fantastic. But then demanding that everybody who's slightly different from the mainstream should be given more privilege than the mainstream, and everybody who's in the mainstream should be unprivileged, that's overcorrecting. That's going too far. So now we live in a world where everybody, if you've got 7 penises, 18 fingers, 3 heads, then you're basically the king of the world, because you're such a victim that everybody has to just fall at your feet. That's a disgusting situation that we're in. I'm a bigger victim than you, so I'm more important than you, and my opinion counts more than yours does, which means your opinion doesn't count at all. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are, how insightful you are, how empathetic you are, how experienced you are. If you fall into the wrong racial or sexual or whatever stereotypes, then I've decided you don't count anymore, because you're not a victim enough. You're not enough of a minority. That's sick. Where does it end? Literally, where does it end? Does it end with the most disadvantaged person in the world killing everyone else? Is that what it is? I met somebody in Latvia in a bar who we were talking about politics just before the British election. He was an English guy, lived in Latvia. And I said to him, what, you just want to hang the rich? That's your solution? And he said, well, it would be a pretty good start. No, buddy, it would be a terrible start. Because where does it end? You think you're not rich? 25,000 Indian farmers killed themselves last year because their harvest failed. Trust me, if you can afford to drink beer in a bar in Riga, you are rich. So should these Indian farmers kill you? Should they hang you because you're rich? Literally, should the poorest person in the world kill everyone else? Would that be fair? Would that be justice? No. If not, then don't start hanging billionaires in Europe, because that will not end well. It will end up with you being murdered by people whose poverty you can't even imagine. So let's not go there. If we're as intelligent and as insightful as we like to think we are as a species, let's not go around pointing fingers at each other, deciding we're all bigger victims than each other, and kill each other until we can find out who's left. That's not a smart or empathetic or sensitive or insightful or just way to solve the problems facing humanity, which are problems that we've created.
You know, it is usually this concept that when humanity comes up with something new, then every time it messes around. So, for example, atomic energy, so Hiroshima, Nagasaki, tragic. And every time, so social media, again, what impact, even we didn't know as of yet, right? What impact it has. So there's some kind of empathy and wokeness towards, for example, women, for sexual minorities. It has been really good that we have been paying to that attention, that we have given voice, and we have helped it a lot. So, but again, this is the first phase what has gone through too far, and it's really in a way strange when you give this example from 40 years ago in Camden, right? That it still hasn't gone to the norm back, right? It's a little bit strange that it takes 40 years right now, kind of that. But anyway, I really liked your idea about this, that we need kind of to think what person would we like to have as a person, right? What society as a tribe, let's say 100 people as a tribe. And so let's scale it up to 8 billion or something like that. So, and there we go to question about education. So how we kind of adapt it, apply that to education and to media as well, kind of that. That would be my hot outtake of that. Kind of that. How do you feel, man?
Super. Great. Doesn't feel like it's been an hour and a half. Feels like we're sitting on Hampstead Heath and it's been 10 minutes.
It's just a wonderful and joyful event to have a chat with you, man. It's just really wonderful. Kind of that. Actually, I would really recommend to everyone who is going to London just to discover Hampstead Heath. It's marvelous. You know, I have been to a lot of places in the world. I have been in jungle in Laos or whatsoever. But Hampstead Heath in the center of London, in Zone 2, right? It's like those old 200, 300, 400-year-old trees and fallen trees. It's like wild Amazon in the center of London, guys. I couldn't recommend it more. Kind of that. Okay, mate, it's such a pleasure to meet you. When you come to Latvia, always you're welcome to my home. And I don't know, kind of, it was such a pleasure. Thanks to you a lot from bottom of my heart.
It's a great pleasure having you in London to visit. Really was. It really was. A wonderful treat.
Okay, coming to you back tomorrow.
Please do.
Okay, mate, such a pleasure. So let's keep connected, be connected. And thanks to Arthur, who is still alive. Okay. Arthur, thank you. Okay, cheers, mate.
Cheers.